And let's get started. My very first question is, what is your background in in government or in anything that you like to share about your background at this moment?
Well, okay. I mean, how far back do you want me to go? I mean, my
Just like
background.
just anything that's like that you think that would be like interesting or or something that you think that would be good to know for people watching this right now. And I'm gonna mostly edit out all of my talking and all my scenes. I'm gonna edit it out and just have you and other interviewers talk.
Right. Well, you may not be aware, but I was born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio, and that's where I
Oh,
spent most of my time up until my college years, where I graduated from Ohio State. I moved down to Columbus and finished up my studies in political science with the undergraduate degree there, and took off to Europe with about $400 in my back pocket and a backpack and a one-way ticket. So I took off to Europe. I had some relatives in Italy. I looked them up. I also had a contact through my dad's side on the German side to look a couple of gentlemen up in Germany,
oh
West
wow,
Germany at the time. This was in 1980.
wow.
So I eventually made my way up to Munich. But a long story short, I ended up getting a job in Munich, working in a machine shop
Yeah,
just by the Olympic Stadium where the 72 Olympics were held.
yeah.
And I was legal. I was illegal first. I was an illegal immigrant for a short time, and then I got legal. And in a matter of days, it was a real simple process. And I ended up staying 10 months. I made enough money where I saved up to go to a graduate school in Paris for the following year. Then after that, I finished that up and came back, worked in the family business for a little bit, got into politics in 84, working on an independent campaign for John Anderson. That was a petition gathering campaign to get him on the ballot in Ohio. And then I joined Gary Hart's campaign. And we won the primary that year against Walter Mondale. Then I took off to Washington, became an international tax paralegal. That got me to London. I got married, got me to London for a couple of years, back, had a baby, and then on to the Middle East for the next 5.5, 7 years,
Wow.
where I was in Bahrain. I worked for an investment bank there. And I did a lot of different things. My background for them was part legal advisor, even though I don't have a law degree, but I did a lot of specialized tax work where I was setting up Cayman Islands corporations, um, bank accounts in Europe, running a lot of money around for the Arabs. We bought and sold companies on a stock exchange here in the United States and abroad, bought property, everything else. So we'd take their oil money. We were an investment bank. We took their oil money and then we invested it into better returns for them.
Hmm.
So I worked on a lot of the legal issues surrounding that. The corporate structure, the offshore tax structure that our attorneys in the U.S. set up. My original boss in Washington ended up being, I was his client. I became the client in effect,
Oh
even
wow.
though I still took orders from him, in a manner of speaking. And um, I became a social director, for these guys too. I started setting up uh, charity tournaments on the island, where our bank was one of the lead providers. So golf tournament arranged, helped arrange that. I was in a relay race, charity relay race, arranged that. Our involvement, set up special events for our bank employees. Um, the south of France, we had an investors conference right in Cannes, outside of Cannes actually, and 3 springs in a row, I flew there and would sit down with the CEOs of the American companies, the European companies that were going to give presentations to the Arabs. I'd go over their video presentations and I'd help edit them, PowerPoint presentations, things like that.
Yeah.
Um, and it was my idea actually to start having them bring their merchandise. Those companies that actually produce product, bring it to the show the net following year. And then now these participants can not just hear a presentation, but see it, feel it, because the product was on the floor.
Yeah.
This was all during the 90s. Then in 99, I was in New York at that point. My son is autistic. We had left the Middle East, got him some care in Connecticut, and I finished up with the bank and found out about the restaurant in Upper through my brother. There's, a couple people involved, and then I ended up buying a restaurant in Upper. So from 2000 to 2008, my wife and I operated the restaurant in Upper Sandusky, but the recession took us out.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I became, just before the close of the restaurant, I already got my CDL. So I was driving long haul for FedEx cross country.
Yeah.
I ended up working in a factory, driving forklift, writing a novel. Then I became an insurance guy. I substitute taught for like 6 years down at Tri Rivers in Marion at the trade school there. I got my real estate license. I started my own business with credit card processing, a side business. So I represented clients, taking care of their processing needs, credit card needs. So I've done a number of different things. I got involved in a natural gas business a little bit. So most of that had happened just in the last 10 years.
Yeah. That's
But the politics is always was there because I was on city council. I had the restaurant, ran for state rep in 2008, lost in the primary, and ran for mayor here in Upper too. That's when when the things were going down south for us after 2008, that's when I decided, hey, I'm going to give up the politics, just knuckle down, work some jobs, and survive. And but I was chomping at the bit the whole time. I was just getting more and more irate because of what Obama was not doing. I could just see the writing on the wall when Strickland got beat. I worked for Sheriff Brown in 2006. I was his county coordinator here,
mm-hmm.
and we took 47% of the vote, which is considered a win.
Yeah.
As opposed, now that's before the gerrymandering, before the redistricting took place in 2010, which explains a lot. But the Democrats are still losing the rural vote.
Yeah.
And so the time I've been here, Matt, even though I'm a Cleveland boy and I've traveled all over the world and everything else, the last 20 years of my life here has really taught me a lot about the rural life and appreciation of it and how things work. And that's the message that the Democrats still fail to get. And that's why we're getting our ass kicked. We're winning Cleveland and Cincinnati and Columbus, but we're losing these rural areas.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, that's as quick as I can go is on the background, and it's pretty varied.
Yeah, that's sounds that's really interesting. All that you've done, and that's great. Yeah. My first question for you, Greg, is what are your thoughts and experiences? And maybe you have some experiences around the globe, or even here in the States with this. Is on ranked choice voting. Have you ever heard of it?
Yeah, no, I'm familiar with it, and it's popular in Europe. It has been for quite some time. A number of countries already employ it, and that's why you get. And they also obviously have less restrictions on formation of political parties.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you get a lot of different parties over there. I think the UK comes closest to our model in that they only have they have at least 4 parties, but there's 2 that are the mainstream, which is the Conservatives and Labour. Maine now this year, for the first time, went full on ranked choice voting all the way up to the presidential slate. So all the offices in Maine this year were going through that process. And I believe, I want to say, is it Nebraska? Is the only other state I know of? I think there's one other state out there. I'm pretty sure there's one other state out there that has ranked choice voting. But it might be just, I know that there's one more than Maine. Anyway, but yeah, very familiar with it. And I know a number of cities are going through it, but we just don't have that big push to get the states to embrace this yet.
Mm. I agree. That's true. My second question for you, I did have one that I wrote down a bunch of general questions, but the second one on my list, we already discussed this before at the Democratic meeting back in June, the Snohomish County Democrat meeting about national citizen initiative referendum to recall. And and I do remember your response to that. If you want to answer again, it's up to you. If not, we can just move on to the next question.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. I pretty much remember all that, but
Yeah.
I'm so much in favor of anything, just in general, just to um, improve the communication, the transparency
Mm-hmm.
between the public and our elected leaders, and the ability for the public to raise issues. And right now, we have gone so far in the opposite direction all these years.
Mm-hmm.
Public more and more is getting frozen out of the process. It wasn't that long ago that I think it failed, but the legislature here in Ohio was trying to pass, I believe, a bill to restrict referendums. Make it
Mm-hmm.
harder to get the referendums on the ballot. So
Yeah.
yeah, these guys just the hits just keep on coming.
Yeah, like a
Yeah.
good friend of mine told me, evil never rests.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So,
So what's your next question?
thoughts on universal term limits and elections for all public offices? For example, oh, go ahead.
No, no, no. Finish your thought. You finish
Um,
your question.
Examples of this would be like term limits for Congress, and well, pretty much any public office, including the Supreme Court, which as you probably know, is lifetime. And not only term limits for the Supreme Court, but instead of them being appointed, they get elected.
Yeah. Mm, that's a tough one. The not so much the other ones, but the court, because I agree with the term limits. I think, let's say, two consecutive 9-year terms, you get a total of 18 in there. Um, that way, uh, you can start thinking about nominating justices that are maybe slightly older. The tendency now is to get these young ones like the Amy Coney Barrettts, like Kavanaugh's, that are in their 40s, because then they're going to sit on there for 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to term limits, then like Ruth Bader Ginsburg was actually 60 years old. So that was a good time, good age for a person to go in there and be at their most productive. Uh, so I would go with that. I don't think you're ever going to get a situation where you're going to be electing them. Then you're going to really politicize it. It's political now. They like to deny it, but they've already
Mm-hmm.
politicized it. By the way, they ran through Barrett's nomination. So I mean, that was all political. It's all
Yeah.
politics. The fact that the Republicans just turned right around, did a 180 on everybody and said, "Oh, well, we didn't mean what we said 4 years ago."
Yeah. That was that.
You
Yeah.
know? So definitely there, I would say term limits are going to be more effective. I think that's the way the courts, we should be moving. That makes it more equitable,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to get I think a more independent court. It's going to be truly depoliticized in that respect. The term limits, I used to be against term limits years ago, only because what you're doing is empowering then the unelected, the bureaucracy. So as it stands right now, if you were elected to Congress, and you will bring, your obviously your closest people, you'll bring them in there to serve with you, on your staff. But a typical congressman has about 40 some people on their staff in U.S. Congress. Most of those he or she probably brought on board, but there's a lot of them who are just hill workers. That's their career. And if they maybe jump from congressman to Senate, or they'll even jump on, there's so many committees, and all those committees have staff. So there's thousands of people that serve on the Hill. And those people are the ones that end up with the lobbyists and experts that come in to testify, writing, the industry officials, you will, writing the legislation.
Yeah.
And if you go to term limits, so it's hard enough for a congressman to go in there on a 2-year term and learn everything that they have to do,
Yeah.
and then they're running for reelection. So there's a couple ways that you can make some changes without having to revert to term limits. And that is you increase the term of the Congress to 4 years.
Yeah.
And by doing that, you get them out of that reelection cycle that always in. You're giving them more time to immerse themselves in their position and get a real authority on these issues. And you're then going to, if it's timed with the cycle, then you are strengthening the party system that much more. So Congress is really dependent on the presidency and vice versa. So right now it's kind of like, you see what happened here. We elected Biden, but we didn't win the Congress.
Yeah.
And what you really want to do is you want to have them like a parliamentary system where you're electing that majority and they're getting that guy in the presidency too.
Yeah.
It should all be like going the same way, and you make the general election that much more important. Get the midterms out. So that's what would be my suggestion is that will fix the term limits. But to that end, in short of that, if you can't get that, the term limits. If you can't the 2 to 4 year term, then I would say implement the term limits. And because the way it's gone right now, the staff's writing it, the lobbyists are writing. That's what Pelosi famously said years ago. We got to pass the bill before we could read it, because they didn't write the bill. They didn't write the health care bill.
Yeah, like that.
They didn't write it.
Yeah.
The industry wrote it, and in fact, that was a plan. That was the Senate version that came from the 1994 Heritage Foundation plan, which Bob Dole ran in 1996 for his health care. It was a Republican plan.
Yeah.
So
it was called Mitt Romney got it in Massachusetts. It was called Romney Care.
Correct. It's the same plan.
Yeah.
And private managed care, there's nothing wrong with it, because for those people that could afford it, when I worked in Germany, for instance, and in the UK, I worked in London, I was part of their national plan. Now, if I raised a whole lot of money and I wanted go on the private system, then there was a private system I can go on.
Yeah.
And I've always said that the United States should be in that same situation. The Obamacare or Affordable Care Act, or whatever we call it, is that private system for those people to shop to get the best rates. But everybody else, you need competition. Everybody else, for the Affordable Care Act, to make sure they have good rates for the private people, but everybody else should be going on Medicare.
Yeah.
But so, again, I know this is a digression from the original question, which was all about the term limits. But you see my point. Here in Ohio, the way they skirt around it is those, like, for instance, Reiniger ran against. He's just jumped from the House over to the Senate. When he gets termed out, he might even just go back. Who knows? If he's not, if he doesn't quit by that point. But that's how they dance around it here. And again, they're relying very heavily on, because of the term limits, on those outside experts and the staff to write the bills without really understanding what's going on.
Yeah, like this was like, well, I thought about this the other minute, but I remember this. If you might remember this too, one of the Democratic primary debates last year, Tim, actually from Ohio, Tim Ryan was saying to Bernie Sanders, "Well, you don't know that Bernie." And Bernie's like, "I do know, and I wrote the bill."
Yeah. In Bernie's case, he actually did do the writing. Never got a Bernie.
Yeah.
But so, yeah. Anyway, that's the thing about term limits. So you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. But I'm at the point now. Let's rotate them out of there.
Yeah.
I mean, look for Dianne Feinstein. She's 87.
Oh, yeah.
Pelosi's up there. I know these people are important, and it took them a long time to get there. But the Democratic caucus does it to themselves. They base their committee chairmanships on seniority.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so the 20 somethings, the 30, the AOCs and the 30 somethings, and even Ro Khanna, I think he's in his 40s,
Hmm.
um, late 40s, whatever. These guys are going to have to wait. They're waiting a long time to get to those coveted chairmanships.
Yeah.
The
Oh yeah.
Democrats are the only caucus. The Republicans don't do this.
Like Jim Jordan, every time there's an important hearing, he's all over the news.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Eh,
See the difference? And
Yeah.
then what you're doing is you contrast that with, for instance, Steny Hoyer gets up there, or who was the other guy from the judiciary during the impeachment?
I know
Nadler. Nadler.
yeah.
Yeah, and these guys are just ancient.
Hmm.
Yeah, big contrast. But yeah,
Yes.
that's something they got the Democratic caucus has to fix.
Oh yeah. It's just I know. I'm thinking like the only way we get all these progressive reforms done is like if a lot of people get in the habit like every day or every week contacting their state, federal, Congress members, asking for these changes, and then at the same time, a group of people get like a constitutional lawyer that can maybe get this heard eventually to the Supreme Court, and then on top of those two things, the presidential candidates come out in favor of it, so that gets more publicity. Like, and if we get, if they do that with ranked choice voting, if they do that with careful, I stress careful, national citizen ballot measures like initiatives, referendums, recalls, and if they do that with term limits and or expanding the term of these people so it's not so do or die or die in some
Yep.
cases, and the which brings me to my next question is another great, I think, constitutional amendment that because that's the way that it will be done. I think probably through constitutional amendments and to really get a lot of change. Because I mean, there's been periods of history, American history, where if you recall, like during the Civil War, we got like three constitutional amendments back to back to back to back. During Prohibition, we got. I mean, we freaking banned alcohol throughout the whole country at one time. I mean, imagine
Yeah.
how. I mean, alcohol has been an important part of civilization for since for thousands of years, and we banned it at one point. So it's I mean it's and then of course then the FDR got term limits. That's what the term limits came about. Was after FDR won 4 consecutive presidential elections.
Yeah.
Of course, he
Well, we're
passed.
going through a period that's not too dissimilar from that right now because the temperance movement started in the late 1800s,
Yeah.
and it gained a lot of steam. It hung around, and for a long time, a lot of people didn't. The majority of people in the country didn't take it that seriously, but it gained so much prominence that
Hmm.
they passed an amendment to prohibit alcohol. Um, Now, obviously, in hindsight, look what happened.
Yeah. Organized crime
Organized,
rise.
organized crime arose from. But we're going through a very similar time right now, and you have half the country,
Hmm.
and this has been growing for quite some time. You thought we were done with racism, and we're not. And
Yeah.
when Obama got elected, you saw all of a sudden, with the birther movement, which Trump, was promoting,
Hmm.
for his own purposes, and this growing. And I will, as an aside, I'm included because during this time I was becoming started to become very cynical. After the crash, what was going on, what they were, all the huge amount of waste, the fact that we were still doing the wars. Obama was, dropping drones everywhere, killing people.
Yeah.
I mean, for progressives, this has been this austerity period has been horrendous because
Hmm.
you cut back on all these programs, and you further alienated the very people who end up turning around and vote for Trump.
Yeah.
And so what you did is you accelerated this movement
Hmm.
that was always there, let it grow, fester, whatever, and now it's like a new temperance movement, right? It's like
Yeah.
it's a total. We're not going to listen to science. we're going to believe in this guy. We're going to try to ban everybody. It's a certain mindset, and that's what that temperance movement was.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Certain mindset it took over, and it's going to over here. I mean, the fact, Matt, that just today, still only 27 Republicans in the Congress out of 249 are recognizing Biden.
yeah. Yeah,
17 states are going to join Texas in that lawsuit.
yeah, that's like Civil War style. That's like,
Yeah,
oh, yeah.
yeah.
Jeez.
So this is again we're in the situation where people are not dealing with reality, just like
Mhm.
they were all those years ago.
Yeah.
To pay for it, man. Who knows what evil they're going to bring in, and then we're going to end up having to spend an whole generation fixing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know that's crazy. Yeah. That's the only thing I could say is this is just insane.
Yeah.
But I mean, hey, yeah, I guess as long as, you're lucky and there's no way to tell if you're lucky or not. Yeah. But I don't know. I'm just not now. My next question is what are your thoughts on ending the electoral college and gerrymandering? Like, which I'm sure that you're probably you already talked about gerrymandering. Well, what about the electoral college? What's your thoughts about that?
I think we're done with it.
Yeah.
I think we're done with it. It's time to grow up. Uh, Again, this is something that it's going to take a huge shift in thinking in this country. It's starting to happen. I'd say probably a good majority of people now want the college abolished.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think they understand that this was something that was constructed for a specific purpose to make sure that the small states, the rural areas and everything else were going to be equally represented in a certain way. They have a vote. But now what you're finding is that it's kind of like a reverse situation where the small states now are holding the big states hostage.
Mm-hmm.
So these very powerful senators, from these rural areas, small population, are controlling the majority, what the majority of people in this country are doing. And the
Mm-hmm.
electoral college is part of that.
Yeah.
So um, it's time for the structure. I mean, we can go to like we talked about. There's a couple of different ways to do this. I'd like to see, and it's all progressive. One is, obviously ranked choice voting. You can go to the popular vote, abolish the college. You can regionalize the primaries. And this was an idea that goes way back to like the 70s. So you have, let's say, the Northeast portion, the New England states will hold a primary all on the same day. Then the Southern states and a group of Western states do theirs. Midwest split into, let's say, 2 or 3 different regions.
Oh yeah.
All right. So each of those regions all have a primary day. That means that the candidates will travel to those regions, all of those different states in that holding the primary. And so now you're taking away the prominence from New Hampshire and Iowa,
Mm.
and you're replacing it with Iowa is in with, let's say, Minnesota, Dakotas,
Yeah.
Nebraska, whatever. And now those states that never get a visit from a candidate are now going to get a visit. They're going
Mm-hmm.
to get the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
And the regional primary, and it's going to be less money for the candidates. And that's something else we're going to talk about. You really need, I don't know if you have this question or not, but public financing. You've got to
Yeah.
do away with the money.
That actually was my last question. Was only government funded elections if you support that?
Yes. Yeah, you have to get to that point, because what we found in the states here, just in Ohio, for instance, Reineke had close to $400,000. He hardly spent any money against me because his inside polls probably told him, "Hey, you're going to squash these guys. All these guys, we all lost,
Yeah.
right, up and down the district." So he didn't have to spend any money. But when I was calling and I was calling certain people that were contributing money to him. These were union shops
Ooh.
that were contributing money to Reineke. And he says, why and they were doing it years before when he was a representative. And I said, why are you doing this? Well, because he's gonna win. He's the incumbent, and we want to make sure we get our voice there. So you're just all this money just reinforcing
Yeah.
the fact that these guys are going to just get reelected. They build up these enormous sums of money, and then they contribute it back to the party, so the party can distribute to other people, or they give it to other campaigns.
Yeah. Like you don't have to.
And yeah, so it's just oh, it's just an endless cycle. So you have to
Yeah.
publicly finance all the offices should be publicly financed, and you got that way you get the money out, and it becomes a lot more fair. You're debating issues. It's going to strengthen the parties, the
Hmm.
philosophy. People are going to be voting, according to their conscience.
Yeah.
It's going to open up a lot of things. So yeah, eventually we have to get to that point.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. And this I've been thinking for a bit now that even if like, everyone on Earth was happy, it doesn't matter because we still could get hit by an asteroid.
Yeah. Right.
So it's probably a good idea if we keep on progressing and getting smarter and being more technology, yeah, get more advanced. So that way we could eventually just get off this planet before it all ends.
There you go.
Yeah. So, oh my goodness. But yeah, my last question is what is your thoughts about a general strike?
By who? By the
Uh
people?
by like as many people as possible.
I think, uh, man, I think we're way past the days of those old strikes that used to happen. I was when I was living in London. I was actually happy to see a couple of really big, large demonstrations. I mean, one was huge. I was staying at this one hotel just off the Hyde Park,
Yeah.
and just watched it proceed all day long. And at one point, it got a little feisty, and uh, the guys, I know they got a certain name and everything, but they're all on these nice horses. And it was like the charge of the light brigade. so, so when the one crowd was getting a little too feisty for him, man, they just set these good horses off. These guys on horseback, and it was probably a good couple dozen of them,
Oh
uh,
wow.
charged right through the crowd. The Brits know how to go on a general strike, man. They do it pretty vocally. And
Yeah.
I participated in one in a nuclear march in 1983 in New York. Or actually,
Yeah.
1982. Sorry, I came back from Paris, and then just within a couple of months, I was in a van with my brother-in-law, sister, and my other brother. We were heading to New York, and we
Oh cool.
participated in the anti-nuke march, and that was a million plus.
Wow.
We walked right down Fifth Avenue, ended up in Central Park, and it's just, yeah, it's pretty nice to see that many people, for a cause and stuff like that. And we used to have that. I mean, look, um, the Pussy Hat thing, that was big. Um,
Yeah.
that was a good one. That was a good reaction. It's real. Hey, if Trump figures out a way to somehow steal this, then you're going to see a general strike.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're going to see people taking the streets like we've never seen before if he tries to steal this.
Oh yeah.
I
Yeah.
love how they're all going, stop the steal. It's like, no, you're the one trying to do the steal.
I was thinking like just like everyone staying home from work for a day or two, like just chilling at home, like
Well,
not.
I like that idea. I think Biden should be the one that actually calls for it, to tell you the truth, because with respect to the virus, hey, just call it bank holiday. That's how the Brits call it. They call it a bank holiday.
Oh
Everybody just stayed
yeah.
home. Everybody just stayed home.
Yeah.
Everything shut down.
That's cool. I know. And the band Blur has a song called Bank Holiday. I never knew what that meant till now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was always wondering, is that what, like, banks just don't work? Oh, that makes sense, because banks they're usually off during, at least in this country, during federal holidays, and I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud here. But is there anything else you'd like to add or about anything?
Um, well, what we're going to do, and I'm glad we had this time to talk and everything. What I'm working on right now, just to let you know,
Yeah.
is a report to the Ohio Democratic Party, giving them a number of things of what we've experienced during the campaign. And we're going to give suggestions to how they can fix things. One of the things that we're going to be looking at is strengthening the county parties. And the ODP's got to come up with a way to help give us a little money. But so we're not in this like cyclical thing where it's like, oh, every couple of years, every 4 years, we get our act together. We have to be constantly working these communities and having a presence. And that calls for a permanent fixture, like an office.
Yeah.
And so where people could come in, and each of these counties should have it. You should have an 88 county strategy and have a
Yeah.
presence.
Yeah.
And make the county chairs start stepping up and having more meetings, start having more fundraising activities, more visibility in their community. And that's what some of the people that I've met up with. And I sent a note off to Chris Leibold. I'm hoping that Chris, to that effect, that we're going to do this. We're going to send a report in. I encouraged him and Gina Grandillo over at Seneca to do the same thing. I haven't heard back from him, but we're going to proceed and give this report and put our 2 cents in. And now there's a new ODP chair that's going to be coming up here soon.
Yeah, David Pepper stepped
Major
down.
changes because they're not getting it. They're not, the way we competed here is I talked to a lot of Republicans. I got a lot of Republicans on my side. I was able to get a pretty good vote. Chris did too. And I think he, even though we got 30, at least we got 6 points better than Biden.
Yeah.
So I think we tell we were getting some people because we had a chance to talk to them, but they really let us down all logistically. Matt, I don't know if you're aware of this, but each of the county organizations paid ODP money for those county mailers. It listed all the, these are the sample ballots. And those sample ballots didn't arrive to the county organizations until 2 days before the election.
Oh my goodness.
We had thousands of ballots at each of the county offices, and there was no way for us to distribute them. We needed those materials a month and a half before because of all the early voting that was taking place.
Wow.
So it's a number of things that if Ohio needs to compete again, they got to start winning the rural counties and getting the vote. We're not going to win the counties, but if you can get up to 45% of the vote,
yeah,
then people are going to start, looking. You start getting attention and giving us a second chance. And maybe thinking, hey, you know what? The Democrats might be onto something here. It's time because of the corruption. They didn't spend any time on the corruption. We harped on the corruption, Reineke and all the rest of them, First Energy, and it fell on deaf ears.
Yeah.
So it's back to the basics. We got to win these people over with the programs, with good programs, good ideas, big ideas, and but we have to have a presence.
Yeah, I totally agree. And there's one thing I've been thinking about doing now that I'm starting myself to get more interested back into the Democratic Party, as flawed as it is, and as I saw them like most of my preferred candidates in the primaries, like I saw them just get vicious, just get despicable with them, even like with making up smears or taking things out of context or bringing up irrelevant stuff that has been resolved in the past 10 years. I mean, just anything. I mean, just like anything like to and not give any media coverage. I mean, this the Democratic Party really, I totally agree. They really need to change. But what my original train of thought is I like to live stream And once the pandemic's over, if this is doable, like I like to do I get out like my telescope, which is about mid range. It's like a mid range telescope,
Yeah.
and like to just like look at the planets. I'm able to get Saturn and Jupiter okay, and lately I've been live streaming it. Well, anyways, I was thinking like that might be a fun, cool way to do outreach, because
Yeah.
every time I get the telescope out, my neighbor is like, "Hey, is it okay if I could, see what you're looking at?"
Yeah.
Everyone likes it. Everyone likes it.
Yeah.
And then another thing to do is like do like music. Everyone likes music, or most people
Yep.
like music. Like there's all sorts of outreach things that we could do that and that that could and then while they're there, have a secure laptop that's secured to a table so it doesn't get stolen, and have the website up where you can contact your elected officials, and and with literature there, almost like a script. Obviously, people got to agree to do it, but they do it. That could really jack up the enthusiasm for civic duty, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But yeah, is there anything else you'd like to add, or?
No, I think I got it, man.
Thank you. And one last thing.
Yeah.
Now that bit in the beginning, when I was kind of stumbling a little bit, and when we're just getting started, what I'm planning on doing, like for the full documentary, I'm gonna edit out most of my talking, because I want to make this about people I'm interviewing, about you. I want it to be about you. I'm gonna edit out most of my talk and most of my scenes, but before I do that, I'm gonna upload the full unedited version of this, what we just did, on Facebook and maybe YouTube, just so I could like review and other people could see it, give their input. Is that all right?
Yeah. Yeah. You got
Awesome.
my permission. Yeah.
Thank you. Awesome. Cool. It was. I want to thank you for agreeing to do this. This was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it, and
I did too.
nice,
Thank you.
awesome, cool. Yes, and I hope we have more talks like this in the future.
Yeah. Keep me in mind, man.
Will do. Thank you. Have a good night.
Take care, man. All right. Bye-bye.